I don't know if it's quite like that, and Ray Bradbury's the best person to quote as a literary source. But for me, I can just feel that I can carry these around a long time, go on with my life, do everything I need to, work on other plays. You know, I'm working on an opera now, I'm working on a musical, some other things, and that story can just be in the back there. And then at some point, when the time is right, it just tumbles out. I had another play, anyway, it was one called Ballad of Iaccio, that was based on a real-life aunt who committed suicide on the island of Kauai at the turn of the century. And that was one where I carried it around for 6 years and I couldn't write it. And then one day, my wife had to go to the hospital. It was fine, but she had to go into the hospital, and so I asked the doctor, can I stay in her room? He said, sure. So they set up a cot for me. And while my wife was resting that night, I was sitting there at my computer, and I started to write. And the play Ballad of Iaccio tumbled out. And again, I don't know why, after 6 years or so, it finally tumbled out. But something about the circumstance, the situation, all conspired at that moment to allow it to come out when I had not expected it. But that's the way I function as a writer. Never quite tell.
There was another question for you.
I was going to ask you about the Civil War and the more specifics. You said that that they toured, went for a subsequent tour because they had lost money in the Civil War. I was wondering how they...
They lost much of their fortune at that time. Not all of it, but much of it. And two of their sons served in the Confederacy, which is very interesting. I read accounts of how when the soldiers are walking by their plantation, they were so well known that I guess the Union left them alone because they were very, very well known, so that you would leave them alone, so that they were afforded some kind of special status. You know, I even read some account, I don't know how true it is, but that after the war, Lincoln invited them to visit him, just to talk about what had happened. But they, you know, what's interesting again is to have them living in the South, having slaves, having the Civil War happen. Two of their sons served in the Confederacy. Part of their fortune that was lost was losing slaves. Right? Chung was the one who had many slaves, and because in one of their agreements when they sort of broke apart, somebody got more land, somebody got more slaves, and so with the Civil War, losing the slaves meant you lost a lot of your money and your treasure. And so because of that, you know, they had to go back on the road again to sort of recoup their losses.
Any last questions? Yes.
I just wonder if you could, you said our guests are here, descendants, if you could tell us in which way they are related, who's child, grandchild, niece, uncle, whatever.
Okay.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I am the,
Thanks, guys.
I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Ing, and Ing had 11 children that he raised, and Robert actually was the child that we're descended from. This is my mother, and she's the great-grandchild of Ing. And Robert was the last living child, and he passed away in 1951, which was actually after my birth. I don't remember him. I'm happy to say that I'm not that old. But, so she does. So we're descended from that line, Ing, Robert, and then one of Robert's children, Albert, is my grandfather, and the reason that I'm passionately interested in the Siamese twins, I was the first grandchild, Robert had 10 children, and then my grandfather only had one child, so my mother was an only child, and then I was the first grandchild, so I was very passionate about my grandfather. And I would like to comment, I don't know who asked the question, but about the actual information directly from the twins. And the most interesting documents that I've seen, and I've only seen those in the past couple of years, were the wills. And I think wills sort of give your essence and portray what you really are and what you really care about. And also in comment about their conflict, the things that we know for a fact, they were hugely respectful till the days of their death, of each other's lives and of each other's families, and they rigidly adhered to that 3 days in one house and 3 days in the other. So I think respect for each other was a huge thing, and I also have lots of feelings about, you mentioned their character and their strength of character and where that came from. You know, as parents, I think we strongly feel that we do things that make our children what they were, and I think that their mother had to have been incredible to make them feel good about themselves. And they did, and they felt that they could do anything. And there are times that you read about that she might be the first physical therapist because they were face to face and she worked with them so they could stand side by side. So I think she had to be an incredible person as well, and their wives had to be incredible people, because for them, the marriage and the procreation, everything they did was within their normal. For the wives, it wasn't their normal, so they had to be incredibly open-minded and forward-thinking people as well. So there are so many layers, and it's a hugely interesting story, both in theater and in the things we know about their real life. There were lots of ledgers and things to let folks know about the lifestyle that they lived. So anyway, we are certainly as a family hugely grateful that the university has these things, but also that you would take the time to do this research and share new things with us too.
And those documents are always available for public viewing here in Wilson Library, and also there are more at the North Carolina State Archives in Raleigh, including the wills. So, thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.